You're listening to Rabbi Simon Altaf. Today I'm going to discuss King David. And King David, not just King David, but we're going to discuss the book of 2 Samuel chapter 11. And what we're going to look at is what happened there. And as you know, that unfortunately King David is maligned by the so-called Gentiles and called a sinner as such, because they believe that he sinned with Bathsheba. So I'm going to prove to you that that is not true. I'm going to show you that that's misunderstood. You read that in 2 Samuel chapter 11, that and it came to pass in the springtime of the year, at the time when sovereigns go forth to battle, that Daud sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but Daud waited still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in one evening that Daud arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the sovereign's house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And Daud sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And Daud sent messengers and took her, and she came into him, and he had sexual relations with her. For she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned to her house. And the woman conceived and sent word to Daud, and said, I am pregnant. And Daud said to Joab, saying, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to Daud. And when Uriah was come to him, Daud demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. And Daud said to Uriah, Go down to your house and wash your feet. And Uriah departed out of the sovereign's house, and there followed him a gift from the sovereign. But Uriah slept at the door of the sovereign's house with all the servants of his master, and went not to his house. And when they had told Daud, saying, Uriah went not to his house, Daud said to Uriah, Did you not come from a journey? Why then did you not go down to your house? And Uriah said to Daud, The ark and Israel and Yehudah abide in tents. And my master Joab and the servants of my master are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into my house to eat and to drink and to have sexual relations with my wife? And as you live, and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing. And Daud said to Uriah, Stay here today also, and tomorrow I will let you depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the day after. And when Daud had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at even he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his master, but went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that Daud wrote a letter to Joab, and sent it by hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, Say to you Uriah in the thick of the battle, and retreat from him, that he may be smitten and die. And it came to pass, when Joab observed the city, that he signed Uriah to a place where he knew that valiant men were. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of Daud, and Uriah the Hittite died also. So the story is painted mostly by Christians that King David committed a sin. He committed adultery because he took Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. Now, is that true? Clearly, Christians mostly are ignorant of our scrolls. They don't know what actually happened. They just assume things are this way. King David was no Job blogs out there on the street. King David was a king. A king had to have a written Torah. He had to have 2 copies of Torah by him. So therefore, a king would know exactly what to do. And King David was a scholar of his day. He was a Torah Chacham, very wise guy, knew what to do, and he wouldn't do wrong. So what happened? The first time King David was outside, he goes to the roof, and most people think that Bathsheba must have been naked in her tent, and King David was at a height, so he saw and he must have seen her naked. That is not true. That's not how it happened. So how did it happen? Well, King David went to the roof, and the tent where Bathsheba was having a bath was completely covered. There's no way King David could look. So what happened, what we are told, is that a large bird was passing through, and that large bird happened to knock the tent off, and there King David saw Bathsheba in her nakedness. That's how it happened. And so King David inquired, and King David realized that this is a woman that the Most High has set apart for him. But at that time, for your information, Bathsheba was actually not married. This is why he inquired of her whether she is married or not married, and he found out that her husband had gone to war. It was custom in King David's time, in those days, that you would give a divorce decree to your wife, and you would say that if I don't come back from war, then you can marry anybody you would like. Basically, the issue was of a woman that she would not be left without support. So therefore, this is what Uriah would have to do. Therefore, when King David had sexual relations with Bathsheba, she was actually a divorced woman, a single woman. The only thing that would be the wrong, if anything, actually there was no sin, but the only thing that you could say was that she may still had associations in her head with her husband, who technically was in war. Technically she was divorced and waiting to remarry him when he comes back. So there were feelings involved. So it was those feelings that one could say that King David perhaps, took advantage of that. Now, King David knew that Bathsheba was written from the foundation of the world for King David. In other words, he knew that the son that was going to be the next king of Israel, that's King Solomon, was to come from this woman. He was that far ahead. So what King David decided is that, because she got pregnant, he decided that when Uriah would return, Uriah would naturally take back his wife. He would then, of course, have relations with her, and everybody will think that the child that is born is Uriah's. So King David hid that, and King David wanted to make sure that the child that is born, he knew that would be the future messianic person. So he realized that. So therefore he decided that I will keep this to myself. I will not tell anybody. It will be a top secret, and therefore nobody will know, only myself. And when he grows up, he'll be taken care of, and God will direct his path, and he will be what God has intended to be. Therefore, that's how King David planned it. Things didn't quite work that way. What happened? Uriah returns from war, and what happens at that point is King David tells Uriah to take his wife back, in other words, remarry her, but he refuses to do so. So he becomes to the point of disobedient, whereas King David is supposed to be his master, but he does a treasonous act, and he calls Joab my master. So when he does this treasonous act, King David then is in his right to have him eliminated. Now King David knows that God was going to have him eliminated. The only mistake, the only error, if you can call it a sin, was that King David allowed him to be in a place in battle where he would die. In other words, if God had not intended him to die, then Uriah would have come back. However, God had intended him to die. All King David did was made it possible to be at the place where he was meant to be. Now, if King David hadn't done that, he would have committed no sin. But because King David did that, it was counted against him. And then when you read the prophet who comes to King David, and it makes it sound like it's a huge big sin. But it wasn't a huge big sin. This is just the way the prophets speak. So the prophet just wanted to make sure that King David realized the damage, and King David accepts that he committed the sin. Therefore he seeks forgiveness and is forgiven for that. Had that been a real sin, as King David had committed, King David would have been alleged to be killed with Bathsheba in the gate. But that didn't happen. So that shows you that King David did not commit adultery. Now on the other hand, Uriah, for being disobedient and calling somebody else his master when it should have been King David his master, he was already treasonous to be killed. Therefore he was eliminated, and by the hand of God, by the way, I should say so. All King David did is said, okay, place him over there. He made the appointment. But God did the deed. So it's not like he did the deed. He didn't pull the sword out and put it into his stomach. Therefore, we must understand that King David really committed a very small error, because King David thought that if he orchestrates it this way, then if he hides it, then this way he can preserve the Messianic line. That's the only thing that King David did, if you want to count that against him. However, King David at no point committed a sin of adultery, because she wasn't married. Therefore, one has to understand is that we cannot assume things. Just because you read something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it happened and that's what it is. Because if you note, in same scriptures in the Tanakh, we are told of the story of Eli, the high priest, and his sons. And it is stated that Eli's sons, they committed adultery with the women at the door. In other words, the wives that were coming, they were keeping them, and they were somehow committing some sexual licentiousness with them. But actually, none of that ever happened. That was just the prophet writing in such a way. What actually had happened, they had kept the wives back overnight, because the wives had brought turtle doves to give as an offering, and other people had brought bulls and calves and sheep and goats. So therefore what had happened, Eli's sons had treated them with preferential treatment, those that brought bulls. That's what Eli's sons' sins was. They did not treat everybody the same way. They did not treat women with preference. They kept them waiting. So the prophet saw that as almost keeping the wife from the husband and having relations with her physically. But no relation took place. So this is the way the prophets write. Therefore, majority of the time, Christians, when they read our scrolls, they read our Torah, they always come to the wrong conclusion. Because unfortunately they are not knowledgeable in our scrolls. Therefore, I would caution you that whenever you read the scrolls, be very careful that you don't come to certain conclusions, because you may not be correct. Ask a knowledgeable rabbi how to discern and how to come to the correct conclusion. So I hope that this has been a useful session to understand how right ruling King David was, and what we received through him. And we are yet to receive the Messiah in the future through King David's lineage as well. So Baruch Hashem, that you're listening to Rabbi Simon Altaf HaKohen. Have a great evening. Shalom, shalom.